Hello and welcome to Fearless Authenticity with me, Jeanne Sparrow, where we find our biggest successes in who we truly are. These are conversations and meditations on what it looks like and feels like when we use our unique gifts to find our passions, make our dreams come true, and engage with the world in the way that we were created to serve. Now, as I always say, I hope it gets deep, but that's where we find the good stuff. But don't get it twisted. It is about the fun of life, because if it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. And as I always say, let's be brave, be free, be you together. So my guest today is a woman who really impressed me on a panel that I moderated in the spring. She is the president of Loyalty and Engagement Services at Mastercard. She's a member of the company's management committee. She has spent over 25 years in consumer marketing, finance, and management, and has been honored and recognized for her amazing work. She has made Fortune's top 50 most powerful Latina women in corporate America several times. She was inducted into the Florida International University's Chapman School of Business Administration Hall of Fame with the Global Leadership Award. And she's also won an International Businesswoman of the Year award. She's also a proud mother and wife. I am so honored to welcome to the Fearless Authenticity podcast, Frances Hondal. How are you, my dear?
Thank you, Jeanne. What a great intro to your podcast. First of all, I absolutely love it. And just really excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I too enjoyed our first meeting and delighted to be back with you.
I am so happy to talk to you because you were so dynamic and kept it so real with things that I could act on. And I'm going to get to those in just a moment. But I do want to go back and talk about you. You were a panelist at this conference, this virtual conference we were both at, She Suite Summit, Women Doing Amazing Things. And I wanted to know more about you and how you got to this point in your life, because you've had some twists and some turns. And I gathered that where you come from and your identity as a Latina is super important to your success and to you. So can you talk to me about how you got to where you are right now?
Yes. No, sure. Absolutely. And I think I do always start my stories with who I am, because as you know, we are who we are because of who we've been and our experiences in our life. And that holds so true for me, given I am a first generation Cuban American, born and raised in Miami. We'll talk about having global international careers and never leaving Miami, which is, an awesome reality. My parents were exiles from Cuba, right? Communist Cuba. And so I was fourth of five siblings. And I lived, an amazing childhood and life, experiencing their major life, change, right? Leaving with three children, their country, coming to the US, learning a new language, learning new skills, and making it happen. And so with that, I just always felt that anything that I did in my career and anything that seemed challenging to me was just so small, like relative to that, to that story, having two grown kids of my own and married, life is, life is a challenge. You have your good times, your more challenging times. And every time I'm faced with that situation at work, throughout my career or my personal life, I sort of draw on that. I draw on my experience of having grown up in this family that always, really focused on the possibilities, really focused on, deeply rooted faith, as their anchor to keep going. And so I always thought, oh my gosh, I cannot give up or complain too much, because look at what they've done. Right. And so, Jeanne, that I always felt was an inspiration for me. And so while I navigated corporate America early, I had the good fortune of when I graduated from college of joining, a bank locally here in the community that then started my career in financial services. And I started in a Latin America division of, American Express, big, Fortune 50 company. How cool is that? And it was a great, way to ease into corporate, because being part of Latin America and in Miami, I'm in the majority now, right? I'm in the majority. I'm Cuban. I speak Spanish. I'm bilingual, educated at FIU, business degree, MBA. So I was up there. I was competing, and but it was a great environment to step into that enabled me to develop and grow as a professional, yet really harnessing who I am and where I came from.
It sounds like it was nurturing for you, which a lot of people don't get
Yeah.
when they're entering into the world. But some of that also comes from your history with your parents, because your father was an entrepreneur too, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I want to tie those things together, because
Yes.
having worked with some of the biggest companies in consumer finance, Mastercard now, Amex before,
Yep.
and using not only your expertise, but your personal experience and your life, not just your life, but your parents as well. And I love, and this is something that came through so clearly when we were on that panel together, is that service is at the root of it. You're always looking for the same things that you have received, which is at the heart of fearless authenticity for me.
Yes.
Are you doing what you feel like you've been set up and meant to do in your life right now? Were there any moments in your life that you absolutely knew, okay, wait, that's not the right choice, this is the right one, with the breaks you've taken, all that? Take me through that, and how where you've been and where your family's been has informed that.
Yeah. Well, I think you called it out really, really nicely. I did, growing up, service and giving to others and being there for each other was just like foundational. So whether that was with family, with friends, my father was an entrepreneur and everybody loved doing business with dad. He was, just a great personality, such good humor, and ultimately wanting to make sure that what he was doing it really well, and really delivering great products, great service. And so that sort of begins to be very much part of who you are, because it's what you see. And so I very much took the same approach, and I always tell people I've just been so fortunate that along my own journey I've connected. Like, I connect with people really easily. Like, that is one of the things that I do really well, and I love meeting new people. I love understanding people's stories. It's just so interesting to understand, what was your background, what influenced your life and your decisions and so forth. And so, early on, just taking on sort of that same, I think approach to first of all, meeting people, meeting them not only for what they can give you, but what you can give them. And so I always feel when I meet people, and I'm a connector, so I love connecting. I'm always connecting. I have a conversation with you, and I think, oh, this would be a good connection for this person. So Jeanne, so I'm always in that mode of connecting, Jeanne. And so networking was foundational for me throughout my career. And like I said, love, advancing my own career that way and getting to know people, but equally being in roles as a leader of helping people find their path, being their best selves as a people leader. And I became a people leader very young in my career. So very young, very inexperienced, but with that desire, right? With a desire of learning and growing and helping. And so since very early on, I took on, leadership roles that helped me bring great teams together, work, collaboratively across, large organizations that can be very complex, political, daunting, but at the same time, really helping bring a very personal and human approach to business, because it's all about people at the end of the day, and connecting people, connecting the right people at the right moment. And so I think that has been very much ingrained in how I've approached my career and the decisions that I've made. I spent almost 18 years at Amex before I took a little, as you said, sort of a turn to become an entrepreneur like my dad, for a couple of years. And oh my gosh, I gained so much respect for individuals like yourself who step out of, whether it's a corporate role or a role that, you don't have to you do not have to do everything that's around you, from scheduling meetings and travel schedules and all of those things.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
It's a struggle.
It's a struggle. And so, and new business. Oh my gosh, like, you are it. You are the product. You are now selling yourself. And so I went through that for 2 years. And I, like I said, so appreciative of entrepreneurs and so respect, they have my ultimate respect. But I also learned a lot about me during that time. And I knew that while I loved the challenge of entrepreneurship, I was a big corporate girl. And so networking again, during that time and making connections back to the community here in Miami, because as I said, never left Miami. I connected to some senior leaders here at Mastercard, and it was such a game changer for me because it was a company that was going through its own transformation. It was a non-for-profit, became a public company like a few years before, maybe 5 years before. A lot of people don't know how young of a company Mastercard really is.
I had no idea it was a nonprofit.
Yes, okay. 2006 became a public company. And we had a new CEO at the time, and he was really looking to transform the company from, an association led company to a public company, and being much more consumer centric, and have given my background and frankly my passion points of consumer experience and loyalty and consumer engagement. It was just a great fit, and I stepped in first to Latin America, again, sort of a familiar ground to me, here in Miami. And then eventually, and for most of my career here now, have been leading global teams, which again, absolutely love.
And it sounds like it's the perfect fit for you. But you know what I love about your story is that piece, and I want to dive a little deeper into it, if you don't mind, that piece about when you left Amex and then you learned something about yourself on this journey of entrepreneurship. Because let me tell you something, entrepreneurship, I feel like everybody should try it, even for a year, just to learn who they are, because it really does show you, without this other structure, what do you do? Because I think it's one of the easiest, fastest ways, because you have a lot on the line. And because I learned things about myself, Frances, that I wasn't ready to face. I was like, oh my goodness. I used to think I was organized, and I realized how much my producers used to organize for me. I used to think that I was like really good with processes. I'm great with processes that other people set up. And I realized the things that I've needed. I love being an entrepreneur, and I probably will stay in this space and dip into other things. But what are the specific things, other than, you say you learned that you were a corporate girl, but what are some of the things you learned that you were like, oh, I thought one thing and it became another, or some revelation that allowed you to be better for Mastercard when you went back into corporate?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, outside of appreciating all of that support and all that support that came through so many other people, team members, and, and so forth, which I very much appreciated. I think the thing that I found that was such a great growth experience for me, when I was in as an entrepreneur and considering, becoming an investor, even in startups and things of that nature, it was a lot of fun. Like, I'm a very creative person, and I enjoy the big picture, like coming up with the big ideas, and then, at some point we have to bring those big ideas and execute on them, right? And so that, of course, when you're an entrepreneur, is the hardest piece, because it requires funding and, again, real business plan development and resources that you don't have at your disposal necessarily. Not that it's easy in corporate America to get investments, to be very clear, but it is. You have an infrastructure, like you have a chance, right, to win. And so during this process, I was approached for a couple of corporate roles, and I had a choice of stepping into what I thought was the natural next step in my career evolution, the right level, the right scope of responsibility, or stepping into a bigger role even than I had at American Express. And I would say to you 2 or 3 levels, roughly. I mean, it was different company structures, but a senior role reporting into someone who reported into the CEO. So really flat organizational structure. And I found myself, Jeanne, saying, can I do this? Can I really do this? Like, I know that I have the qualifications technically. I'm a finance major, international business, understand consumer businesses, marketing, etc. But can I operate at that level so quickly? 2 steps below the CEO. And I started finding myself questioning whether or not I was ready to take on those roles. And the reason I share this is because I think that what it made me reflect on was that while I was probably going to now join a different level of peers Ivy Leaguers, US based, professionals, etc., that I brought something really unique. And I kind of go back to this idea of, well, what do you enjoy doing? Like, I'm a great connector. I connect the dots. I connect really well in terms of understanding strategy and what it takes to execute. I connect people, organizations, create followership, create energy, to deliver great and big things. And so as I started reflecting on this decision, I thought, boy, that's what I have to do. Like, I have to focus on what I uniquely bring to the table versus trying to be one more really smart Ivy League graduate joining the corporate table. It's like, I'm sure you can find a lot of those people, but can you find people who, yes, of course, have the basic content, what I call the strength in content, knowledge, experience, but can also do something really special in an organization that was starting an important transformation. And that's where I landed. And that's where I felt like, okay, enough of this imposter syndrome. Not that that ever goes away, but I'm stepping into this. And, 10 years, almost 11 years later, here I am getting ready for my next chapter.
Frances, I love that story so much for so many different reasons, because I think it speaks to the heart of what I'm trying to talk about here with fearless authenticity. And we talked about a lot the first time we met, that idea that and I think it happens for us as women a lot. And I don't know if you see it in the teams that you have led, because I think it happens for all humans at some point in time. Yes. But I think for some reason, especially when it comes to business, because we're told so many things and we believe so many things as women, that we don't see that the real gift is in that space that is unique. And it's like, and somehow we've twisted it to believe that it's the thing that we're not ready for it.
Correct.
And I love that you took the choice and the chance. And I also love that you saw that in yourself and somehow you were given that inspiration.
Yeah.
Where does that inspiration come from? And what is it that helps keep you moving it through, and also helping the people you lead do it when you see it, that doubt come up in them?
Yeah. I think, my experience, especially during that time, which was a big shift, spending as long as I did in my first large corporate role, and then, again, restarting for all intents and purposes, requires you to have, we can call them board of advisors, we can call them friends, people we trust, or whatever we want to call them, because different people, classify these, your network, your really trusted circle differently. And that's what I did. Like, I sincerely believe it's really important to identify those people in your life, of course, besides your parents, who love you no matter what, and see, all sorts of amazing things around you. But other people who really, who you can really trust to be honest, to help you see things you don't see about yourself, potentially, or about new opportunities and the context, right? Like, they help you see it a little different. And that's what helped me, Jeanne, in that time, is really consulting with my network and just putting it out there. You have to be honest. Like, you have to be really willing to put yourself out there, your doubts, what are you really thinking through, the considerations you're making, and just be really honest about what are you concerned about? Like, what is that you're trying to answer, or and so forth. And so I did that. And it was through someone specifically. So here's what's interesting. Someone really specific who used to work for me. I hired her a few years earlier. And she's, I knew she was super smart, great person. And she just had a way of just helping me step out of that situation of the constant swirl. Can I, should I, would I? She's like, step back, for a second. So really help me think these things through. And I think you need to develop those type of relationships in your life, besides, of course, your family, because they're going to be naturally biased. Like, I know I'm super biased with my kids. I mean, no matter what, I try to help them, but I'm biased,
because you want to be your family's biggest cheerleader.
You
like
do,
that's
you
that.
do,
That's
you do.
that.
And they, my family, my husband's been my biggest cheerleader for 32 years. Imagine that.
I love that so much.
Yes. And so I think that was really important. And what I learned from that, and again, I think building up until that point, I had come across in my transition. I love that, By the way, I had a new title when I left Amex and joined Mastercard in those 2 years, because it was after the crisis of 2009. And
Oh, wow.
it was a choice that I had to make of relocating to New York to continue my career or step off and reconsider my next phase. And for a number of different reasons, I decided to step off and looked at it as, well, this could be a really interesting opportunity. It's like reinvent, reassess, do all those things. But I came across something called Strength Finder. And it was the dean of the College of Business at FIU, Joyce Elam. And I took the Strength Finder. And wow, that all of a sudden you start seeing this whole point of what a huge benefit it is for yourself and for the teams that you lead to really talk about your strengths and what unique elements you bring and how to find opportunities that harness those strengths, as opposed to the constant exhaustion around trying to develop skills that you may not be able to be naturally gifted at. I mean, it's this really, in corporate America, you think about it, it's even called development plans, right? It's all about, yes, developing, but in the conversations, unfortunately, tend to be around what you haven't done well and what you should be doing well if you want to keep growing, versus, having a balanced conversation around the areas that you do really well, build on those strengths, connect opportunities to your strengths, pivot some roles to harness your employees' strengths. Yes, of course, while helping them continue to develop, in particular, based on their aspirations, not yours. That is
smart.
super critical. So I've kind of become more empathetic as a leader over the last, 10, 12 years or so, since coming across that, because I think it's incredibly powerful.
And it can change how we do business, especially. And
Yes.
I think that is kind of at the core of what happens when you become an entrepreneur, is that you do have to find those, and it becomes very clear what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And you don't have time to do all the other things that you like. What? I do these 3 things really well.
That's
And
right.
so I'm going to lean into that and find somebody who loves doing these things I don't do well. And I think
That's
that
it.
if we were able to codify that in more organizations, bigger organizations, corporate situations, I think we would find so much more productivity. Because then we're asking people to do what they're great at.
Exactly.
And what they already love. One of the words that I keep hearing coming up, because it's a theme for you, and it also came up when we spoke in the spring: connection and collaboration.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna connect that to my favorite words, fearless authenticity. When I say fearless authenticity and I bring in your connection and collaboration, what are the things that come to mind for you? Because it sounds like you've gotten really clear about the tools to find the thing that is authentically amazing about yourself, and you go all the way hard with it, which I love. So when I say that to you, what are some of the things that come to your mind?
I like to believe that, and I do believe this most of the time, accept who you are. And I think in moments where I doubt myself, I'm like, nope, who I am is actually really good. And so really taking the be you, and it's great to be you when I think about, the conversation around authenticity, and I like fearless authenticity in particular, because it is being, unbashedly, is that the way you said it? I think in Spanish sometimes. So
you can say it in Spanish, it's okay.
Yes. Well, I think in Spanish. I don't have all the Spanish words, which is really weird. But anyway, shamelessly authentic is what I'm coming up with, right? And it is this idea where, of course, you have to understand the environment that you're in. We're not coming to a corporate environment and just, sort of having the same approach as I was having, dinner and drinks for happy hour with my friends. Okay, this is a corporate environment. However, by and large, right, this is so important to be true to yourself, to be able to express yourself, to be able to share your perspectives, which in my case, being a Latina, born and raised in a Hispanic community where we are the majority, not the minority, coming into, right, a different environment for the most part in corporate America. Now, I've been really fortunate. I've been able to bridge my career from being more oriented to Hispanic to really being global. And I think having, had that experience, being born into those circumstances and had a career has made me be more interested in meeting different people, in listening to different perspectives. Now, having said that, I have a point of view. I really do. I'm pretty strong character that way. But I have really been conscious of how to collaborate and think differently by working in teams. And something you said that's so important, which is we don't have it all. Like as individuals, we don't have it all, and that's okay. But what you have, if you build that with other people who have other strengths and other experiences, like that's what makes the world go round. And that's what's so special about being aware of what you bring. So you can be a little bit more intentional about, okay, so if this is what I bring and this is what's needed, then let's get this skill, let's get this experience, let's get this person in this situation. I think you just got to raise that, to your awareness and be okay with what you find about yourself. Some things are scary, but there's generally good things. Okay. We're humans.
You know what? And that last part is really true, because some things are scary, because I think we're scared that if we find out we're lacking someplace that we'll never find it.
Yeah.
Right. But it is out there. One of the things that I loved about a lot of your advice, because we did get a lot of questions when we were on that panel together. One of the things that I really loved about your advice, and I hear it today, is that there's so much practicality to what you do. And you think about ways to put things together. That there was one, I hope it was you that said this, that you block out a certain time for yourself every day, that is sacred, that nobody can get into unless you give them permission. What are some of the other, like, A, why is that so valuable? And then B, what are some of the other things that you have as advice for people? Because I think you have been able to take this idea and turn it into action in a way that other people can replicate, that I think is beautiful.
Yes. So that was my advice. And it was given to me as advice to a coach early in my career, because as you hear me, I'm very high energy. And with this high energy person, there's a lot going on in the little brain constantly. And so some of it was really around, again, receiving feedback. And I always say, and I learned this too from an old colleague many, many years ago, feedback is a gift. Take it. You may want to return it. You may want to regift it, but honestly, it is a gift. So take it. So one of the things, of course, with me is pause, reflect, and prioritize, because otherwise I kind of go after stuff, because I'm a builder. Like I love building. I love, big problems. Because that's why I stayed in business for as long as I have, and big opportunities. And so this idea of, securing very specific time in the calendar forced me not to keep going to the next thing, and saying, nope, I'm going to take the time. I'm just going to block it. So I block at the beginning of the year, an hour and a half from 12 to 1:30. Lunch is a good time. I used to do it in the morning, but honestly, I'm not a morning person. So I have to get to know the reality. Like I'm not really up at 8:00 anyways. My mind is not really at full force. So 12 to 1:30, every single day of the year. And it's permanent until I decide it's not. And like my assistants know that at that time, it's a conversation we have about whether or not I release that time for something, because things obviously come up that are important, that require attention. And, I'm not inflexible. I've never been an inflexible person. So I'm not going to be with my time, but it does force me to pause. And maybe it's as simple as just relook at the rest of the day, or something really important that I have to reflect on, that I need to take the time for myself, whether it's personal, whether it's for the business or otherwise. And it is a huge, and I people who I've also shared this, tell me that it's been one of their game changers, actually, in how they manage their day as well. So that's been a big one for me. Other pieces of advice. Honestly, I'm a planner. So I am a planner. I'm a to-do list person, going on vacation next week. And my iPhone has a little notepad with all the things that I have to pack. I can't leave it to memory anymore. But I am a planner and I try to be very, I guess, as disciplined as possible around what matters most and needs to get done now, versus, yes, it's important, but it doesn't have to get done today. And, we're human, right? And things that I know about myself, for example, is, of course, I'd like to do the easy, fast, and get it off my list because I can scratch off my list. But is it really relatively as important as the hard thing?
Right.
Probably not. And so, really forcing myself often, and it is, I'm not super successful at this all the time. I just kind of deal with it. It's just, nope, do the tough thing. Do the tough thing first. Get it off. You're going to feel so much better. And then those little things, you can get them off quickly. That priority of what to do and what has the highest impact on whatever you're looking to achieve, I think is super important.
All right. So I'm having a personal coaching moment now. What is your process for how do you actually decide what floats to the top of the list? Like, is there a specific question you ask? Is it just as simple as what has to get done today? Or are there some other questions that play into it?
Two questions. I think probably one is absolutely, is it time bound? Like, does it have to happen today? And I'm doing it just today. Like today I came to the office for the first time. Wanted to make sure we had good connectivity, but it's a couple of things that I know that today I have to get done. That's one. And then the impact, like if I don't do it within the next, day or two, the impact is greater. And the impact is usually greater in not a good way. And so I try to accelerate it from that point of view. So I look at it in terms of like what absolutely has to get done today, but also in prioritizing what's the impact if I don't get to it. What are potential consequences if I don't? And some of it is, who cares? Like I don't answer the RSVP to a wedding. I can answer it next week. Like who cares?
Right. The person trying to do the seating chart cares. But for instance, I feel, do I care about this in this moment?
True. That's a good point.
Sometimes that's a you problem, not a me problem. And I like that a lot. Thank you for that coaching moment because I feel like I needed that, especially this week has just been insane. And I love that you shared that advice and how that feedback flows through. Yeah. All right. I'm getting to now some of my final questions that I always ask everyone. What is your proudest achievement? And this is a two-part question. What is your proudest achievement? And what do you still dream of doing, especially as you are designing your next act?
Yeah. Proudest achievement, easy. My family. It's like I said, we've been married. Eddie and I have been married for 32 years. We met in college. We have two boys, two incredibly amazing young men. They're good people. They're very respectful. They're fun, and so us as a family, like I just love us. I have to say, like we're one of those people who like we still vacation together. We have a good time. Yes, our kids love to join us on vacation. They're 26 and 24. They both have one is just got engaged a couple of weeks ago, and so super super excited about that. And so they would have to definitely be my proudest. I think as I look forward, Jeanne, I'm at the moment that I'm in an important transition in my career and in my life. I'm stepping into what I'm calling the next chapter. I am not calling it retiring from corporate or retiring from Mastercard, which I will do officially at the end of the year as I step into a new career of a portfolio of boards. I've been really fortunate to join 2 public boards in the last year and a half. I absolutely love the experience, thriving in the experience, appreciating, by the way, what I'm bringing to the table in this experience, new form, new network. Like I'm just like really absorbing it and loving it. In this next chapter, what am I dreaming about? I'm dreaming, to continue to bring impact and, drive impact. So of course on the boards, it's great. I also am very active on the board of FIU, which Florida International University. It's my alma mater. And education is really important, being a first generation college graduate in my family. And so I started a scholarship, a first generation scholarship for women at FIU. And so just really excited. That was several years ago, really excited to see the scholarship grow, impact, people's lives, as we know education does. And outside of that, continue to have a voice for women and minorities, and sharing my story, if you will, to the extent that it can give somebody an idea, hope, interest, aspiration, motivation. I love that, because I really, for me, it's exactly that. It's being able to pay forward, just what I consider has been an absolutely, just a great, life, if you will, and both good fortune and family, and in my career. So if I can play a little role in helping someone else, achieve what their dreams are, gosh, wouldn't that be amazing?
It's a blessing, sis. It is
It is.
definitely a blessing.
It is.
And I am sure for every young Latina or any woman of color who walks into your organization and sees someone who resembles them, who may have, or maybe even an immigrant family,
Yes.
Anybody who shares something with you and sees you where you are, that alone, I think, is like, just knowing that it's possible
Absolutely.
is such a gift. And then my final question that I ask all my guests: when do you, Frances, feel like you are at your best, truest, most authentic expression of yourself?
I would say to you, to be very honest with you, let's see, on the hammock with a good book, in our house in the Keys, loving life and appreciating, life, and the good fortunes, and there's so many blessings, because I really do. Like, every day I wake up, thank God, one more day. So I live life in gratitude. And so I love just to be in that moment of relaxation. Otherwise, Jeanne, around people who I love, who I know I can trust, and I can be who I am. And so those are always, of course, the best moments.
I love it. Frances, you have been a joy to talk to today. Thank you so much for your time, your honesty, and your authenticity. Sis, you are a blessing.
Thank you, Jeanne. Likewise, so much fun talking to you.
I love Frances, not only for her energy, but for her practical advice and how it connects to her philosophy and the experience she's had to date. I mean, sometimes we know how to think about something, but we don't know how to act. So here are some things that really stood out from my conversation with Miss Frances Hondal: accepting who we are. I think it's one thing to know who we are and what we do, but it's another thing to fully accept it. And when she says that in moments where she doubts herself, that she thinks, nope, who I am is actually really good. And that acknowledging who we are, being true to that and our particular point of view, helps us stay conscious of the best ways to collaborate, because none of us as individuals have it all. And I think we think sometimes that our best self does have it all, right? But no, it's about knowing the things we do, leaning into that part of it. And then when we know that, it helps us to find the other people and appreciate in other people their strengths and their experiences, because they don't have it all either. And we're all the pieces of these puzzles that fit together. And the way it manifests for her through networking, investing in others, and team building, I think is a really healthy and productive way of doing that. Other pieces of her practical advice, I already said, I love how she talks about blocking out that time in her calendar every day, but also looking at feedback as a gift when we take feedback, a gift when we give feedback. And another big one for me that I am trying to master is doing the tough things first, getting that off our list, using our energy to tackle the things that are hard for us. Because I think it's so easy just to want to check off all the easy little things on our list to say we've gotten something done, and how that can be a time waster, and how much better we feel when we tackle those big things. And asking and determining what those are by asking what has the highest impact for whatever it is we're looking to do. Talk about prioritizing, and that being one of her magic words. The three simple words, but these are not always easy: to pause, reflect, and prioritize. It's the pause that gets me every time. Thank you, Frances. I appreciate your advice. I appreciate you for sharing your story and being my guest today. Also, thank you to you for listening. We appreciate your support as our listeners. We couldn't do it without you. And I also want to thank my Fearless Authenticity production team for making this podcast happen. I would love it if you'd follow me on social at JM Sparrow. Please also like, rate, review, download, share, and subscribe this podcast wherever you find your podcast, whatever platform you're on, including YouTube for the video version as well. Send us your comments, your questions, any of your thoughts. We want to know what's on your mind. As always, thank you for listening or watching, and we'll see you again soon. This has been Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow.